Now, the British Prime Minister's visit to Algeria is the result of tragic circumstances and the pressing need to address the problem of jihadists in the region. 2 weeks ago, we saw the killing of dozens of international workers at a remote gas plant in the Sahara.
And as a result, David Cameron agreed on Wednesday on an intelligence sharing programme with Algeria. Now, it's quite a bold step for both countries, not only in the fight against terrorism, but also in terms of trade prospects for Algeria and the UK. But is it entirely risk-free? And is this an effort by the West to re-engage in North Africa? Joining us now on the line from Paris is the Franco-Algerian journalist Nabila Ramdani. Nabila, thanks very much for joining. I guess the first question is, why is David Cameron down there in Algeria?
Well, as you mentioned in your introduction, David Cameron's visit is directly linked, of course, to the hostage crisis that took place recently in the southern east part of Algeria on the gas facility, which ended up in a bloodbath with terrorists kidnapping Westerners and some of them losing their lives, and that includes British citizens, of course. So David Cameron's visit was directly prompted by that tragedy and his willingness to tackle what he called a generational struggle against Al-Qaeda, not only in North Africa, but also in West Africa. And one must see a direct link as well with the ongoing crisis in Mali. So at the heart of his visit were security issues.
Talking of these security issues, the Prime Minister was asked yesterday if Algeria could become to David Cameron what Afghanistan was to Tony Blair. Namely, they get bogged down in a conflict against an enemy that nobody can quite pin down. He, of course, unsurprisingly said no, because there was only a sort of a military aid in the likes of Mali, and it'll be a bilateral agreement with Algeria. But surely this is the United Kingdom entering into a very, very grey area, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. And it has to be said as well that even when the French started their intervention in Mali, one remembers the French foreign minister, Laurent Fabius, who said that it would be a matter of weeks before the French managed to contain the Islamic threat and stop terrorists effectively from taking over the whole of the country of Mali. But there are already very strong indications that, if anything, the conflict is escalating. The French are sending more troops on the ground, and indeed the assistance provided by Britain is increasing as well, with David Cameron effectively sending more military personnel on the ground in the shape of advisors, but also increasing the logistical support. So there was, of course, a strong support by the French public opinion when the conflict started, as the French President François Hollande effectively sold this military intervention as a commendable thing to do to fight Islamic militancy. But as the conflict drags on, the mood in the public opinion is likely to change, especially as we will see the first casualties amongst French soldiers. But I think the public opinion also is aware that the French intervention, and indeed Western intervention through the UK and indeed the US offering logistical support to the French as well, that there's more to it than a fight against Islamic militancy. But it has also very much to do with realpolitik and pragmatism, self-interested pragmatism, as Africa is, of course, offers huge resources in terms of gas, oil and all sorts of minerals that that Western governments are tapping into.
And Nabila, has Western governments generally been happy with the way Algeria has been reacting to this slew of problems?
Well, that's a very interesting point you're raising, because we remember David Cameron's criticism at the way the Algerians handled the terrorist attack, effectively criticizing the uncompromising manner that the Algerian security forces used to deal with this with the crisis. But David Cameron's visit was, in many ways, also aimed at mending any damage to the relationship between the two countries, countries, as he acknowledges that he will need the expertise of the Algerian security forces who have been fighting Islamic terrorism for years, including especially in the 1990s when the country literally plunged into chaos and into a murderous civil war, which ended up with some 250,000 people being killed. But what is also surprising, and it has been picked up by commentators already, is that the Algerian president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, who is in many ways leading an autocratic regime, who himself quelled any possibility of expression of dissent in 2011 when neighboring countries literally exploded into revolution, is now being seen as a surprising surefire ally in the fight to wipe out terrorism. And commentators are wondering if after the fall of dictators like Mubarak in Egypt, Ben Ali in Tunisia, or indeed Gaddafi in Libya, is this alliance with the president of Algeria does it signify a return of the strong man and the Western governments allying themselves with, autocratic regimes, effectively?
So that given, you have Algeria used to bloody civil warfare. You mentioned the 1990 civil war and the fact that it is a regime which acts unilaterally. Do you think the Algerian-British partnership will be dependable and trustworthy?
I think it will. We don't know quite yet in which form, which shape it will take. There are talks about greater intelligence sharing, for example, and more security cooperation. But it has to be noted that Algeria was already cooperating with Western countries, including the US, with the CIA, and indeed the MI6 in Britain, in the wake of the so-called war on terror. But what is happening is that this cooperation is becoming increasingly transparent, with Cameron's historic visit to Algeria being an indication of that transparency. But I think it will certainly be done on Algerian terms, and we are unlikely to see, for example, foreign troops on Algerian soil, as the country remains extremely suspicious of any interference in its internal affairs, given its colonial history being under the control of the French for 132 years, and indeed gaining their independence after a savage liberation war, which killed more than 1.5 million Algerian people. So I think it's unlikely to see, a full cooperation. What Algeria is doing at the moment is also assisting logistically, but on a very limited scale, the French and indeed the British intervention in Mali.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much, as ever, for joining us on Monocle 24.